Welcome back, everybody. I am Pietro, and this is a new presentation tip. Dear viewers, in this video I will talk about presenting with the help of presentation cards. Enjoy this video. Welcome to tip number 6, the do's and don'ts with presentation cards. Generally speaking, presentation cards are quite a useful tool, but only if used correctly. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. The advantages of presentation cards are quite obvious. Next to helping you remember parts of your script, they also keep your hands busy, taking away from you the concern of where and how to keep your two hands. Let's start with the ideal size and format of the cards. Generally, I work with cards in A5 landscape format, and I use a slightly thicker paper, like 200 grams per square meter. A5, by the way, is exactly half the size of the usual sheet of paper we use almost every day. Not this half, but this half. But why A5 landscape and not A4, our usual sheet of paper, portrait and maybe on a clipboard? Well, of course, everyone is free to choose, but in my opinion, A4 is just too big and clipboards are not particularly handy. And don't forget that if you're standing on a stage, maybe a bit higher than the audience, an A4 clipboard could cover parts of your face, at least for those people sitting in the first rows. In my opinion, A5 landscape is simply a lot more convenient. Then let's talk about fonts, font sizes, paragraphs and white space. In terms of fonts, I highly recommend you using fonts with serifs. Huh? Serifs? Serifs are those tiny little extra lines, also called feet, that you can find, for example, at the bottom of letters. These feet build an invisible line that helps staying on the same row while reading quickly. My favorite serif font is Georgia. Then, important, choose a font size that's big enough to be read easily, and don't forget to number your cards. Always try to put whole sentences or whole paragraphs on one card. Then leave some white space around the text for any handwritten last-minute notes that might come. And trust me, they will come. Then on the back side you put the logo of the customer or the logo of the event, because that always looks very professional. Now to an often asked question. What do you write on your cards? Just keywords or your script in its integrity? In other words, entirely formulated sentences. Well, that depends on you and on which way you feel most comfortable. Try to think back at your school days. What was the best way for you back then to memorize things? I usually write down whole sentences, but that does not mean that I stick to them to 100%. Writing down the whole thing just helps me to study and memorize my script. And that brings me to the last part of this tip: how to actually work with cards. What you must not do is alternating reading and speaking. To keep my presentations fluent, I do the following. While talking, when I notice that I'm getting to the end of a sentence or to the end of a paragraph, or when I notice that I'm losing the thread, I take a look at the next paragraph or even at the next card while I am still talking. And that allows me to continue without interruptions. You have to practice that, but trust me, it's easier than you think. Another situation in which I almost always take a look at my cards is when I have to pronounce particularly difficult words or names. Welcome, Mr. Stanislav Krivo-Kraszowski. Or when I have to convincingly convey precise numbers or specific and complex data and so on. Dear viewers, that was tip number 6, the do's and don'ts with presentation cards. I would like to know what you work with. Do you present with cards or maybe with a tablet PC? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, I hope that you found this tip useful. If you did, please like and share it. And should you still prefer to hire a professional presenter? Well then, Here's what I have to offer.
We will address today's topics in a lot.
Tendenzi beschleunigen Entwicklungsprozesse. Vi ricordo i nostri hashtag per i vostri contributi, tipologia completamente nuova e rivoluzionaria. Cette année, nous avons un événement hybride.
Thanks for watching and bye bye!